shoes you got on today?
Just white, plain boots, boring.
You're gonna wear a coat like that. You better. Do you have like rhinestone?
Yes.
I think
That would have been a little much, though, don't you think?
probably, but I mean, does it matter? I kind of like it.
You didn't update this at all on anything, did we? Okay. Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mary Beth.
Nelson? Orison?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
Wunschel?
Here.
Hanson? Reet? Bulk?
Here.
Okay, well, we have a bit of a skeleton crew tonight, but we will manage. Item 3 on our agenda is an update by Shannon Landauer, Iowa Lakes Corridor Development Corporation President. Welcome to the mic and welcome to the council, Shannon.
Yes, thanks for having me. In front of you, you have, I'll call it a multi-purpose document. Based on the variety of communities and the counties that we serve, there were several different processes used for the funding process, but we did do this piece too as somewhat of an annual review of our successes for 22, as well as what you can expect program-wise for 23. So we will likely be visiting again in that funding process, but just thought we'd step through this tonight. So looking through the document, we'll start with the board of directors. We have had seats open and transition going into 2023. So currently representing Clay County, we have Doug Benjamin as a past chairman. Donovan is serving in that elected official role for us for Clay County. Mike Kennecke with Cotton Grave Farm Management is joining our team in 23, as well as Ebony Ray with Williams and Company. So we're really excited with that team. Part of the strategy with those new board members is really to align talents with what it is that we are focused on. As we look at our fundraising and funding for the organization, Ebony will bring great expertise, as well as Mike when it comes to that ag sector, as well as some of the workforce background. So just digging right in those next pages, existing industry is first in your report because it is by far our biggest area of priority is working with our existing industries. What we'll talk about a little bit is what it is that we do in the existing industry programming. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about the Best of Iowa program. That is the statewide existing industry program that they use and really focus on target industries as well as growth sectors. So we do get a list of companies that the state wants us to be visiting with, and then we expand upon that locally for those that we see as growth opportunities, as well as some of those smaller businesses throughout the region. This year there is going to be a transition. The software program that we've used for about 20 years is no longer. We have not yet gotten our marching orders from the state in terms of what software we'll be using. So we had to gather up that data, we have it in Excel format, and we're gonna use the same questions, the same process to bring continuity forward. And we felt like that gives us a really good year to expand that visit list. We wanna get into some of the service industries, we wanna get into smaller companies as well that have great growth potential within the region. We will continue to expand that work with at least 15 additional larger industry visits as well, getting outside of those target sectors that the state gives us. Also, in '22, we hosted our first Manufacturing Week events. We did a tour per county. We had an excellent week of bringing together our business community, our community leaders, great participation in that. We actually were asked when the next tour would be, if we were going to start doing this on a monthly basis. Not likely, but probably quarterly. We want to make sure that our businesses and communities are partnering well, and so we are excited to bring forward additional programming that way. So talking about the successes in '22 with existing industry, a total of 61 of our industries were visited. 26 of those were Clay County companies, and 8 of those are planning to expand approximately $93 million in investment. That's going to include, as far as we know, 25 plus new positions based on current projections. These are going to include physical expansions of the space to add square footage. It's going to be equipment investment for some automation and for some processes, as well as technology upgrades. So great variety of project work there. Additionally, not those that fit within the BRE program, but we did help out with Tyler Johnson's electric program and project. We have had an acquisition project we've assisted with in Spencer, 5 successful property searches, and 4 succession projects that are underway. There is a little further detail in your booklet later on the existing industry that you can take a look at. The next section is business attraction. We really are focused not just on answering the phone when there's potential projects coming our way, but really on preparedness and telling the story of the corridor outside of the area. So what you're going to see in '23 in that area is hosting officials for familiarization tours of our region, including Iowa Economic Development Authority, Iowa Area Development Group, utility partners, and site consultants. There's been a lot of turnover at the state, new people in new positions. We just haven't seen them out like we had pre-COVID, and we feel like it's important for them to be looking at our sites, meeting with our community leaders, and having a really good understanding of our existing industries and the gaps in the market that we feel like are a good fit for this area. We also plan to develop a communication plan for ongoing outreach to site selection professionals to educate them on opportunities in the region. We want to host consultants as opportunities arise. We have built a database of over 300 site consultants that are actively working in the area. We've been doing direct outreach, really a newsletter type of format, but they don't want to necessarily just see our successes here. They want to see announcements when we have an asset become available. If there is a building that is vacated, if there is a change in available property, we have an opportunity to get that out and get it done quickly. Also, we need to identify more developable assets throughout the region. The building inventory is depleted in the state of Iowa in the past round of speculative building. We did sell the Spirit Lake Shell building this fall, which was one of the 2 last, and our understanding is that the last has now been under contract. So we need shovel-ready buildings. What we're seeing in the office, we've had calls on 30 to 100,000 square feet, but the ceiling height is different. Some of our buildings are aging out. Couple existing manufacturing facilities come to mind first. Ceiling heights just aren't what they need to be for automation and the new equipment that they need to bring in. So we need to make sure that we have assets like that available. So just really quickly, some of the successes in the '22 cycle. We did have 10 site and building search inquiries. We attended 2 trade shows, 3 site consultant events, and 3 CVN events. In Clay County, we did have 2 locations that were chosen. We are actively working to finish up one of those. And the beauty of that project is that they are starting because they want a footprint in Northwest Iowa, Southwest Minnesota. If they're successful here, the plan is expansion, potential manufacturing that'll go along with that. We have had startup projects assisted, again, site and building search, financial resource, and connection to our partners at Cirrus. There have been 6 direct outreach projects that we've worked on as well. When buildings become available, we look back through those past contacts. In Q4, that Spirit Lake Shell could have sold several times, so that's a great list for us to start contacting once we have something open up. In terms of site readiness, we do have 2 industrial RFPs that came in for us in 2022. Actually, we finished that up here 2 weeks ago from IEDA. They are code name projects that are active, so we're not able to share much on that, but they are in the advanced manufacturing sector. We're looking at $80,000 to $120,000 on starting wages. Again, trade shows, they're really focused on food processing. While we have green industrial site, we also have a water asset. And so we're taking a look at different things that are complementary. We know that within dairy, there is a lot of capacity. There is a lack of processing within Northwest Iowa. So we're really looking at that as a primary opportunity for us here and doing direct outreach. Again, back to site consultants, we attended a total of 4 events, 22 individual meetings on our corridor sites focused on green industrial, had some discussion certainly on the floodplain issue, mitigation, and what they would like to see when it comes to promoting that property. So I did mention our inventory and how we market those. Location 1 or lowest is what you likely hear about. That's where we put our sites and buildings as they become available. That is updated by our team on a quarterly basis. When we hear of something that opens up, we try to do some direct outreach. But there is another national platform that we use for our sites and buildings. It's called CoStar. CoStar has had a lot of activity. There was one day in February of 22 when 672,000 unique visitors conducted site and building searches. So again, just an example of how important it is for us to be getting our assets out there. Couple quick final notes on business attraction efforts. Site certification is something that has been a big discussion when it comes to preparation of sites. So that when companies are looking, we're not just promoting cornfields. We're not just promoting maybe a brownfield site that needs some mitigation on it. What we have seen is a lot of movement toward mega sites, a lot of movement toward owned properties that are really market ready, development ready. We did have some discussion last week in our mayor's council meeting as well as another on what we're looking at for site certification, and it was underway with green industrial until the floodplain issue came up. But we do have a webinar on Thursday regarding site certification at the state. And what we learned is that they are easing some of those guidelines that we have to meet. One restrictive had been access to 4-lane highways. So, just some of those pieces that made us ineligible with some of our sites. So we're excited to hear that some of that is easing. But on the flip side of that, with the movement in the industry toward the mega projects, 1,500 acres, 5,000 employees with some of these projects that we're seeing, there is also movement at the state level with High Quality Jobs Act incentives. And one of the criteria for this new pool of funds is going to be certification of a site. Those are the only places to be spent. So again, we have a lot we're going to learn on Thursday morning. I think Adam is joining me and digging into that a little bit. But unfortunately, as those things keep moving, we have to keep pace with that. And so I think that green industrial site is going to be a high priority to determine what we want to do with that, or potentially move on and look at what is that next industrial asset that we want to be marketing and have ready for projects. Finally, just want to really quickly to reinforce some of the work that we're doing. The Site Selectors Guild is really the premier club of site selection professionals in the United States. They put out their 2023 priorities for economic developers to be focused on. First and foremost is existing industry programming. Secondly is customized job training. Third is site selector engagement, typically face-to-face. And fourth is going to be labor shed, customized studies and market analysis. So we were pleased to see that we are definitely focused on the right things when it comes to site selection. I think we do a great job in Iowa and locally of being prepared and having that information at hand as needed. Entrepreneurship, I'll try to move through a little more quickly for you guys. There is good discussion on what it is we focus on with entrepreneurship. In 23, our goals are going to be to continue seeking additional resources for entrepreneurs, focusing on some business succession programming to make certain that anyone who is interested in selling has a good pathway to sell at a good market rate, but also trying to get ahead of that a little bit with transition planning. OEI will continue again and again, ease of access to local programs, making sure that what we have available is well known. So in 22, our corridor team assisted with 26 business projects and 38 consultation projects. In some cases, we have multiple interested parties in the same project, some of our downtown businesses, et cetera. Those projects that we worked on were service, retail, food, and light industry. Some of that included business planning, financial packaging, connection to professional service, and again, some marketing efforts. We do have that Size Up software on our website. We'll continue to promote that. We also try, every time we get the opportunity, we participate in school programming. We really promote entrepreneurship as a great pathway to get back into these communities, whether it be starting your own business or, again, businesses that will become for sale as people are aging out and preparing to transition. So we always look for those education opportunities. Currently, working with the Chamber with some education topics for retail. I guess one other thing that we did acquire retail data to support a business location here in Spencer. And some of you may be familiar with those community indicator programs. It's called the Retail Trade Analysis. What it is a document that Iowa State University puts together. So it looks at our pull factor. It looks at the spend per capita. It compares us to our peer communities across the state of Iowa. The most recent had been 2019. We were looking forward to that COVID timeframe to see what happened and if those trends continued. We did hear from Liesl just end of last week that those reports are in draft format on a server for 21, and the 22 data will be to them, so they expect to be back on that April timeframe. So all indications are that by the end of January, we will get to see that data for 21, kind of take a comparative glance between 19 and see how our peer communities did as well. And finally, in the past couple of years, you had heard of the Startup Skillet program that we had gotten funding from the state of Iowa for. We did work with Buena Vista University to get that completed. So that's going to be a curriculum for entrepreneurs to step through the phases of a startup process for small business and otherwise. So again, excited to be able to deliver that content very, very soon. The final sections, you have housing, workforce, childcare. Those are big topics. While they're line item, there's a lot to each of them. So our housing strategy is working with the housing studies that have been completed and looking at building permit data annually to see if we're on target with what those needs are and if we're meeting some of those thresholds. We are doing some developer outreach to promote city-owned properties. We have had 2 different meetings, and we're working with a Sioux Falls developer too to just talk about what assets the city of Spencer has. Again, share that document and talk about a path forward. We also continue to support those workforce housing tax credits. We had an application that went in this year that was not funded, so working with them on how do we make sure that we are funded this year to bring that next phase of development forward. Workforce, as you've heard, Iowa Workforce Development is transitioning a little bit. We do have Paula as a new representative in the Spencer office, so working pretty closely with her. We did attend an Iowa State opportunity this year to essentially a trade fair, talk to students about opportunities out here. We continue the home-based Iowa work and many other things that way. So again, I don't want to take up way too much time, but marketing is our next section, and we're really excited. When I came, we talked a lot about the Get a Lakes Life campaign and what we were trying to accomplish that way with creating a tool that wasn't just corridor-led, but led by residents in the community. So employers could use it for outreach. Grandparents could say, hey, we have an opportunity back here, maybe consider moving home. But we also talked with our board a lot about how that missed the mark in some ways, that we aren't just the lakes. And so we really want to focus on a brand that crosses business recruitment, people recruitment, tourism, education, all of those things. And so we did complete a marketing audit. We are bringing forward our brand strategy. Our board will get a first look at that in our strategic planning on Wednesday. And again, updating and simplifying our messaging so that when this brand is seen, it's recognized. The This is Iowa campaign is one that we have bought into. We've done some advertising from the corridor to reach out to young professionals, to reach out within the manufacturing sector, and this is really going to be a great backup to that. So while we say This is Iowa, next they're going to see and know that corridor brand. And then we did add some marketing component that we hadn't had before, was an active business for sale page. Lois is for sites and buildings. We've got things for existing assets that are depleted. We had not had an active page, so we did work with Golden Shovel and get that up to date as well. Otherwise, the corridor did handle a lot of events this year. Aside from our business recognition and manufacturing week events, we had quarterly investor meetings. We hosted the event that was managing supply chain in times of chaos. We had 5 elected official tours that we hosted, and we are working to put together a Build My Future event for October of '23. Administratively, we are focused on the strategic planning process for the next 5 years, as well as a long-term target industry discussion. And our representation continues at the Iowa Rural Development Council, Empower Rural Iowa, the Department of Transportation's Automated Transportation Advisory Council, and Professional Developers of Iowa. So that was a really quick rundown of some of our activity. In the financial section of this, again, I know we're not doing our funding request, but since you have it, there is a budget with sources and uses of funds, history of funding, as well as both our IRS document and our most recent audit. So you have all that available for your processes. So with that, I would welcome any questions you may have.
Very thorough. Anyone have any questions for Shannon at this time?
Other than to thank her and Joanna and Lisa for coming.
Yeah,
We appreciate the update.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I really appreciate Shannon, not only on behalf of the council, but also on behalf of the community. I think you have done a very nice job of giving regular updates to the council, letting us know exactly what's going on. And I also appreciate you coming to the mayor's update. I think that was November, perhaps, something like that. And I'm sure that you'll be asked again to be a guest on the mayor's update. But I think it's really good, not just for us as council, but it's also good for the community itself to put a face on what the corridor is and what the corridor is doing. So thank you very much for your efforts, and thank you for coming in tonight.
Absolutely. And I would just offer, as I said, I know I ran down a lot of things. So if anyone wants to talk further, my door is very much always open. I can put some more notes together too. So thank you all.
Thanks. Okay, item 4 is the audit presentation by Winter Stave and Company for the fiscal year 2021-2022. Arv Dravinga at the
Good
mic.
evening. My name is Arvind Drivinga. I'm one of the partners with Winter Stave and Company. Also with me tonight is David Schmidt. He recently became a partner in the past year, so we congratulate him on attaining that status with our firm. He's primarily responsible for the audit field work and overseeing the preliminary report preparation, and my role is to then be the supervisor and reviewer of those work papers for the audit and the audit report itself. And we appreciate the opportunity to provide audit services for the city, and we appreciate all the cooperation of Brian and the rest of the staff in our procedures. So we'll invite you to turn to page 2 of the bound audit report. This is our independent auditor's report. It does introduce the financial statements in the first paragraph. This report has been redesigned from previously, so it does introduce the financial statements that refer to the different levels that are audited, and that this is related to the primary government of the city of Spencer as of the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. Being that it is the primary government, it does not include what is considered a component unit, and that would be the Spencer Municipal Hospital. The hospital is subject to a separate audit. So the second paragraph on page 2 refers to the fact that that component unit set of financial statements is not included in this document. And if we go on to the third paragraph, we do provide our opinion on the financial statements, and that is that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective cash basis financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the primary government of the city of Spencer as of June 30, 2022, and the respective changes in cash basis financial position for the year then ended, and that's all in accordance with the basis of cash receipts and disbursements. Following that, there's a number of other paragraphs that refer to different responsibilities and other items that are included in this bound document. I will move past that. Management discussion and analysis begins on page 5, which is presented by the city for additional evaluation of the financial statements. But I will then ask you to turn to pages 11 and 12. The financial statements themselves are provided in two different perspectives. The government-wide perspective is on page 11 and 12. It is designed such that on page 12, there's a broad summary by governmental activities and business type activities in the second and third to the last column, and then a total column is provided. If you go to the third line from the bottom of each of those columns, you see a change in cash basis net position. So the governmental activities had a decrease of approximately $550,000. However, an ending cash basis net position, the bottom line of $21.3 million. For business type activities, an increase of slightly over $1 million and an ending cash net position of $20,379,000. So grand total between those two, $41,663,000, excuse me, 41.663 for the cash basis net position. Now, if you turn to the next page, 13 and 14, there's a breakdown of that net position in a number of different areas. Much of that funding is restricted for particular items, and those are listed on pages 13 and 14, with the second to the bottom line being the unrestricted balances in total of approximately $28.3 million, which are more discretionary for spending by either the governmental activities or the business type activities. The second level perspective is the government fund level on pages 15 and 16. Here the individual funds are listed, the individual major funds, and then the second to right-hand column on page 16 is the non-major governmental funds in total, with a grouping schedule provided later in the bound document. Again, then, for each of those funds, approximately 2/3 of the way down the page, there's a net change in cash balances line, so that indicates the change for the current year. Then the beginning cash balances are added in to get to the balances at the end of the year. So that's what comprises the grand total. The change in cash balances for the year were mostly positive for the different funds. The largest decrease was in the capital projects, where expenses were incurred utilizing existing balances from prior years, as well as transfers in and some funding that was issued for bonds. The bottom portion of that page also then lists a breakdown of that cash basis balance, restricted, certain committed funds that are a further level of council level restrictions that have been placed on funds, and then the unassigned is the second to the bottom line there listed of approximately $4.3 million. On to page 17 and 18, very similar schedule then for the proprietary funds, sanitary sewer, solid waste, landfill, and airport. Revenues and disbursements are shown, and towards the bottom, third line from the bottom is the net change in cash balance for each of those funds. The landfill was the largest increase, offset by smaller decreases in the other funds. The end of the year cash balances are provided at the bottom line of the page. Again, the grand total, $20.3 million maintained there. Yes, Bill? Can I stop you a second?
Sure.
before we get done and have to flip pages back. On page 15, I think, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to it, but at the bottom, the last half dozen lines, it talks about committed for. It's not, the committed for doesn't mean any specific projects. It just means in general, we've committed those funds for public safety purposes. There's no specific projects for those. Correct?
Right, they've been identified as a priority on behalf of the council and management, and that the intent currently is for those
Okay.
funds to be used in that
I
nature.
thought that's what it meant, but I
Yeah,
want to make sure.
exactly. Thank you, Bill. So following the proprietary funds, a further breakdown of those funds also is shown on pages 19 and 20. Restricted funds for certain debt service requirements and other items related to the landfill. Unrestricted funds then are shown the second to the bottom line there as well on page 19 through 20. Following those financial statements, there are a number of footnotes required to be provided to give a background and further supplementary information. The only a couple that I will refer to on page 25 is where note 3 is the bonds and notes payable, and there's quite a bit of information regarding your debt outstanding. The broad picture of that is at the bottom of page 25, governmental activities. It shows beginning balances, the decreases for the year, ending balances, and then the amounts due within 1 year. And then the bottom portion is the same information for the business type activities, showing increases for the year, decreases, and the ending balance. If you flip to page 26 for the general obligation bonds, each individual outstanding obligation is shown with the maturity listed, principal and interest, the interest rates in the next successive 5 years, and then in increments of 5 years thereafter. So you can see each of those individual bonds listed, and then the bottom right-hand corner is the total of all those, indicating that on a year-by-year basis, there's a fairly consistent maturity that is taking place of those bonds that are outstanding, the general obligation bonds. Some brief explanation on page 27 of which each of those bonds contain, and then revenue notes have maturity schedules provided on page 28. Again, each individual issue, and then a grand total is provided 5 years, the next 5 years, and then in 5-year increments after that. Further footnotes and schedules are provided following that, but keeping on the idea of the indebtedness, if you turn ahead to page 47 and 48, some additional description is provided of each of those bond issues, date of issue, interest rates, the original amount, and the final maturity date, with a listing of the activities that took place during this current fiscal year. The amounts issued, repayments by the bond, and then interest paid on those bonds. Following page 49 and 50, does provide a comparison to your budget that was adopted for the year. On page 49, the governmental funds, proprietary funds are listed with a total. That's the actual amounts that were expended during the year and revenues that were received. Then on page 50, the original budget, and then the final budget after amendments are listed in the second to the right-hand column. And then the actual amount compared to the final budget is reflected in a variance that's provided in the far right-hand column on page 50. The legal requirement is to maintain the expenditures within the budgeted amount. So the middle portion of the page where the disbursements are listed, all of those amounts reflect that amounts were spent within the budget that had been adopted by the council. Then the last item that we provide as an audit firm is on page 60 and 61. It's a report on internal control and compliance, listing the various activities that we performed and the requirements that we did those under. And then on pages 62 and 63 is where any commentary items would be provided. Related to the financial statements is Part 1 on page 62. There were no findings noted for either internal control deficiencies or instances of noncompliance. Then Part 2 relates to items that the state auditor has requested that we provide information on, either that you have complied, or if there were any noncompliance, then that would be listed, or additional information provided. So on page 62, we do list under item D, the business transactions with city and city officials or employees, which is required to be provided here. There is a threshold of $6,000. That underneath $6,000, there is no expectation that there's a concern with conflict of interest. Over that is where there is a level of concern that is raised, and our comment is that those are the situations where we would encourage you to consider whether or not doing any kind of bidding would be appropriate in those particular types of situations. Then on the last item on page 63, item L, donations to private nonprofit corporations was addressed quite strongly last year and continues to have a couple lingering items that we noted that there's still efforts being made to verify and validate the agreements that are being made with a couple different entities. So we encourage continued efforts in that regard. So that's the bound audit report. There was one other letter to those charged with the governance that you were provided as well, just a thin document. And that, again, provides a very broad overview what an audit entails, covers various items already covered in the bound audit report, so no additional items that I feel necessary to bring to your attention at this point in time. So again, we appreciate the opportunity to provide your audit services. I would take any additional questions that anyone may have. And again, thank you to the staff for their assistance.
Any questions?
I got just one quick question.
Yep.
We'll go back to this donations to private nonprofit corporations. Have you seen anything new in the last 12 months since you reported to us that would give us a little bit better guidance? Because we've talked about it in finance, the state auditor kind of has us out in space with no real strict guidance.
Right. The state auditor has not come out with any additional clarification since we would have been here last year. They still use the Constitution of the state of Iowa is what they base their position on. So the encouragement is to continue to try to seek to comply with their expectations to the amount that, to the level that's feasible.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Harv, and your team for preparing this audit, and thanks to all the city staff who worked with you to provide you with the documentation as well.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. With that, I would entertain a motion to accept and approve fiscal year 2021-2022 City of Spencer audit as prepared by Winther Stave and Company. Motion made by Bill.
Second.
Second by Donovan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Item A is a motion to approve City Council minutes of January 3, 2023. Item B, motion to approve licenses, renewal of Class E retail alcohol license for Brew Oil number 40, subject to final approval by the Iowa ABD. C is to approve renewal of liability insurance for the landfill with community insurance for one-year policy in the amount of $12,726. And D is a resolution adopting final assessment schedule for nuisance abatement and confirming and levying the assessments for mowing.
Make the motion.
Motion made by Tracy,
Second.
second by Brian. Any discussion? Please vote by machine.
Orison, I. Larson, I. Wunschel, I. Bulk, I.
Okay, motion carries. There are no public hearings under item 6 or old business under 7. There's one item under new business, and that is item A. Motion to set a date after which odor enforcement court action will be taken by the city against Simrise.
Mayor, to start the discussion.
Yes.
I'd introduce a motion that we set that date as April 15th.
Okay? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Brian. Any discussion?
Bill, was there a reason April 15th came to you? I think you and I had a brief
Yeah.
chance to talk as well.
Well, I'd ask Dawn and also Dan, because we're basing this upon what they told us their belief is, and that's kind of that's where we landed on April 15th.
Yeah, I guess I would defer that to Dan, and since he's kind of taken the lead on this, and he's the one that recommended the April 15 date.
The April 15th was based upon the 12 to 14 day window. This would be on the short side of that, would be the April 15th would, I believe, be the 12-week window. But we should be in the ballpark, and we'll know at that time if there's cranes and stuff out there, then we can talk about it again. But this sounds like a good date to start, since nobody knows what's going to happen for sure. So we have to draw a line somewhere, and this is as good a place as any.
And I guess just to be clear on what it is that we're voting on tonight then. So if the motion is April 15th, what is it that we as a community are saying must be met by that date? Otherwise, we may take action. What are kind of the bullet points of what it is that we're asking Simrise to do?
I think the main one is the lid on that tank. I think reading through all the information, we understand that the biofilter may take a little bit longer, but in the short term, there was gonna be a charcoal filter over the port on the, so I think that's what we're shooting at right now, is that the lid on the tank. That should, according to all the information I've read, and it looks like that should make a significant dent in the odor if that happens. And at that point, that's what the deadline is to make sure that stuff happens on schedule.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I guess for my fellow council members and, you know, looking back kind of through the emails this weekend over this, I mean, to me, it appears a couple things. One, Simrise indicated to us that by the 15th of April, that this tank lid would be on site and in place and done and constructed and over with. I guess that would be one of my requests. Two, reading through their emails, the biofilter that they were set to install, it appears that they experienced a delay, but at the time they're going to install a temporary carbon filter at the time that they install the lid as well. I would, I guess, ask that be part of this. I think that filter and the carbon filter is probably a crucial part to it. But then moving forward, I guess, and if this is the first step, I understand that, but I mean, they kind of gave us a laundry list of things that they were going to accomplish. Are we going to eat this elephant one step at a time, or do we wish, you know, we had our engineers look at their report and it seemed like a handful of things came back. Have we received any response from Simrise to our engineers' review of their plan?
I think Simrise's engineers have only had our engineers report for about a week, so it may take a little bit longer to get that back to know what the response is. When the two different engineers will go over each other's data and decide where that needs to go. And since none of us are engineers, it's kind of hard for us to judge where that is. And so I think that's the good first step, to have Simrise's engineers and our engineers talk and we'll get a report at some point from that, probably in the near future. We can probably try to speed that along. We can get a hold of McClure and see where they're at with that.
Yeah, I don't want to, but, I mean, I'm just looking, I just don't know if we want to address this all at once, or if we're interested in just kind of doing this one step at a time. And the reason I say that is because, like, the biofilter, you know, on their schedule, it just says summer. Well, I would appreciate a more definitive timeline than summer of '23 on the installation of the biofilter. And I guess for me, it's kind of one of those, once we got a response back on a date from that, then I would hope that that would be the new expectation. That is, if Simrise indicates to us that, you know, let's call it May of '23, we're gonna have the biofilters installed, well, then that's when the biofilters should be installed. So I guess my question for the group is do we wanna take this one step at a time and call April 15th the deadline for the lid on the tank and the temporary carbon filter? Or are we interested in going further?
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate Ryan's frustrations, and we've got a lot of citizens in Spencer that are also upset and frustrated with this. And what I'm hoping, from my perspective, Brian, is that this is the first step. As far as I know, Simrise has not given us they don't have any definitive date of when that final step of the filter is going to be even ready, do they? Dan, do you know, or the mayor? I don't think so. They're just saying summer, because my personal opinion is they don't know a date yet, but they know it's sometime this summer. Am I right or wrong?
I'm not 100% sure. I know that there was a date, but there was a lot of caveats to it, so I don't think there is a firm date for that, but we can check.
And my opinion is, once they give us a firm date, then we're gonna make them stick to it. So it was another motion to say, okay, you've done this, and we know that if they have it truly performed on step one, and they've given us a date for step two, we can do the same thing, in my mind, for step two.
No, I appreciate that approach. I agree, Bill. I mean, for our community members, you know, there's been a lot of discussion on this topic, and I think, I don't speak for my fellow members, but I get the impression that there's at least consensus that we appreciate that this is an issue, that we're looking for a solution. I think we're all, I take that back. I know I am in favor of creating some definitive timeline for our community members, so it's very clear on this is what they can expect moving forward. I feel for them being in the gray. And so if this is step one, then by April 15th, the tank lid and the temporary carbon filter need to be set. I'm comfortable with that, but I guess my request to Dan would be to reach out to Simrise and make it very clear to them that I guess I personally am not comfortable just waiting forever on a response as to when this biofilter is coming. Yeah, I mean, in the next few weeks, I feel like we should probably have a date in mind.
Yeah, Brian, I agree with your sentiments, but I think we have to start somewhere. I think that this step that we're taking tonight, if the council approves it, shows the public that we are serious in drawing a line, that we are not going to go past on this first step. And if we have to, we can take other steps after April 15th. That's just my feeling about it, and I don't have a vote on this, so. Any other discussion? Okay, now, the motion is, Bill, you added the April 15th date.
Right.
Do we want to add to have the lid and the biofilter the carbon filter installed?
Yes.
Okay, would that be okay to add that? Mary Beth, you got that?
Yes.
Okay, everybody?
I don't know if somebody seconded it, they'd have to agree with it.
Okay, Brian, you seconded that. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Item 9, engineers report. Jim?
Good evening. I guess all I have to report is we're closing in on the plans and specs for the North Y. Was it North Y Gateway Edition? I've asked Dan and Brian to maybe try to set up a committee of the whole meeting so we can review that with the intention of at your next meeting, your February meeting, that we be setting a letting date. We've got a few loose ends that need to come together. We don't have all the property rights to build everything where we need to build it, and that's one thing that we should get hashed out. You know, I don't want to get a contractor on board and not be able to put things where they need to go. Some of those property rights are involve the potential Quickstar property, which they have not acquired and probably won't. So we're looking at alternatives. We'll probably bid some alternates to go around that piece of property with the water main and potentially one of the streets. So we do have a few loose ends, but we're getting close, and I'm anxious to get it out on the street for bids. We've got pretty good interest. It's a nice open field job, but there's a lot of work out there and not as many contractors as there used to be. So anything we can do to keep it moving would be good. So if there's a way to I know you've got a lot of committee meetings lined up and a lot of stuff to talk about, but if we could carve out an hour or so to talk about this one, I think it'd be a good idea. And that's all I have unless there's questions.
I assume the issues are things, nothing that we can do as a city, it's more of the property owners and the legal side?
Yeah, on the other end, it's just, some of it's a process, some of it's, absentee landowners on some of it, and, yeah, and the other issues are just, right now, we don't have anyone, coming into that property. We're developing this on a speculative basis, so, until we get those, we own the land that we want to build almost everything on. But we also have to get the force main and the water main down to 24th Street, and we don't have all of those easements, but we're getting close. Right, Don? We're getting closer? Closer.
I will say that Quickstar is getting closer to being able to close on that property. They want all their design done. They want the city to approve this design. They haven't sent that to us yet. So they want to make sure that goes before they pull the trigger. And the current owner of the property doesn't want to do anything with it because they're going to buy it. So we're sort of stuck just waiting for that process to play out.
Right. And I would say that I have been in contact with their engineers on site-specific questions. And so they're working on it because they're asking the kind of questions that you would ask if you were doing details. So we are getting into the weeds on grades and things like that. So I think you're right there. So I kind of anticipate in the next, 2 to 3 weeks that this thing's going to come together. So.
Well, one thing I'd definitely like to say, if you're needing a committee of the whole to hash some stuff out, this is a very important thing, and I think I speak for probably everybody up here that we need to keep the momentum going on this as aggressively and quickly as possible to keep it going. So whatever we need to do the committee of a whole, if that's what you're needing. I know we got some other issues that we've talked with that we could use committee of the whole to see if we can go forward on some other bigger development stuff for the city. So if that's what we got to do, let's do it.
Yeah, and I'll kind of echo that. Are you needing anything from council as far as property rights and acquiring that, or is that something you and Don and Dan are working on?
We will. I don't know, some of those easements, we haven't brought any of them forward yet. I didn't know, we going to trickle them in, try to bring them all at once, or what is our plan?
Well, I guess I would hope that within a week or 10 days, we'd have those nailed down, and some of them will require some payments by the city. As Jim has pointed out, the pipeline people have greatly raised the expectations of landowners in regard to the grant of easements. And we're working with that. I think the other thing probably that's important for the council to approve is the alternates that Jim mentioned. I mean, how, he has well thought out approaches to how we can use alternates if we don't have things nailed down, but I think that needs council review too.
And the other thing, you guys are the developer, so typically, at some point, the developer tells us as engineers, this is what we want to do, or this is, what we're going to do. So, we'll present the plan to you, and we would like your blessing. Also, then on the plating side, so what we're developing is a product, and that product is a lot for sale. And I want to review the lot sizes and that determination before we put the final touches on the plans. The one thing that we are working on, our last loose end is drainage. That site has no, for the most part, the land that we purchased has no drainage outlet. So we're working on that, and we are going to have to detain some water. The other thing, too, we want to talk about before we get too far down the road is, some kind of covenants for that subdivision. Similar to the Green Industrial Park, you went through covenants on that, what we're going to allow. We're setting up our drainage design with the assumption that we're going to apply the Iowa Stormwater Management philosophy, where you detain on your site, basically the same runoff rates as you would get from a 2-year storm, a 5-year storm, and the 100-year storm. That's kind of the norm. And you'll see that in a lot of places. You see the little detention ponds or swales or things on a site, and we strongly recommend that requirement be enacted for this subdivision. And maybe at some point in time, we need to talk about that on all commercial developments in the future, because, the pipes aren't getting bigger if they're already there, and runoff rates may change. And so if we can hold some of this water in different places, we need to. And we're setting this project up, with that in mind, that they will be detaining their own water.
Which way does that water run after it comes off our property to the south?
It's in 2 drainage districts. So most of what you acquired, well, basically, everything on the east side of Second Avenue, that's the avenue, the street, the north-south street we're building. Everything on the east side drains south to southeast, just into the field below, and then that's really flat, and a lot of that's in floodplain. So eventually it finds its way to that drainage ditch that's down there. We're going to have to run a tile down there. There is an existing 8-inch tile, but it's just not big enough to get rid of the water. We'll probably have a 2-acre pond that will discharge into to do detention and retention, but we're going to have to do an outlet for that. And so we're trying to do as much as we can to kind of divert the water around that field so we don't make it worse. But we are going to, we're designing our system, our public improvements, to meet the pre-existing runoff rates. So in other words, we're trying not to make a somewhat poor drainage situation any worse. Everything to the west of Second Avenue, which would be most of the existing businesses out there, and then those infill lots that we bought as part of the Wyatt addition, they drain west to the road ditch, to the highway ditch, and then there's a crossing pipe there about 2/3 of the way down from the north end, goes under the highway, and then there's a culvert underneath the old railroad, the bike trail now, and that discharges, eventually drains toward Vanderhaeg's, and then south of Vanderhaeg's. Excuse me. And I've looked at some of that, and took topo south of Vanderhaeg's to see if there's, where are the bottlenecks and what can we improve. Again, we don't anticipate adding to the drainage in that area. With the exception that as those infill lots develop, they may add some drainage. And that's again why we want to, incorporate those stormwater management philosophy in there so we don't make that situation worse. But I think at some point in time, we're probably looking at some improvements on that side from the bike trail west and south towards the river. So there, we'll do, but I didn't want to add that to the scope of this project. It's already getting cumbersome, and we want to get this one done. That's more of a drainage type project, and so we'll see how that goes. What we really need is a bigger culvert underneath the highway, but that's a much bigger animal. So, yeah, I guess all I'm asking is if between now and the next council meeting, if there's a time that you could get together, we'd sure like to.
Yeah, Jim, I agree with Donovan that this needs to go forward, and if we need to put this on a committee of the whole, let's get it done. So I think, hopefully before the next council meeting, which would be what, February 7th? 6th?
Yeah, we have an extra Monday, so.
Okay,
We
yeah,
have two, I'm looking at the 30th for this, 6 o'clock, but I'll talk about that during my little
okay,
upcoming meetings talk here.
okay,
That'd work for us, that'd work good.
okay. Thanks,
All right,
Jim,
Thank you.
thanks. City managers report, Dan?
I had 2 things tonight. Some good news. We've been talking about the cost of this retail coach. SMU has met with their board, and they've agreed to pay for half of the first year of retail coach, which is good. It makes it more affordable for us. And there's been some emails going back and forth. Our 18th Street Bridge is up on the state and federal bridge list. So we're working with the county engineer, because we don't do bridges as much as the county does, so we're working with the county to try to put something together. We have to accept the funding at some point. We're looking like we can still take that step on the first meeting in February on the 6th, so I'm working with the DOT on that. They had an option they originally said the 3rd, but they had an option that said if your council meetings didn't line up properly, that they could just let them know, and I've done that, and I haven't heard back yet, but that should be fine since they asked for it, so. So that's good news. It's $1.5 million, and the rough back of the envelope, maybe $3 million for the project, so we'll finalize all that. We got some people working on firmer estimates and all that. You'll hear more about that in the coming weeks.
Okay, any questions for Dan?
Yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
And I see Berlin's here as well. Is there if they do this project, question number 1, what year? And number 2, is there any way possible that project's going to be done by fair time? By the time fair time comes around, or are we going to have a traffic issue when that time comes?
We're looking at construction probably 3 years out.
Okay,
And so I'm not sure the timeline for building a bridge like that. Certainly, we may be able to try to schedule that, but if it's gonna be over a year project, you're not gonna avoid it no matter what.
Yeah, and my understanding is too that this is more grant money than originally the county thought that they were going to get. So I think that it behooves us to get moving on this and accept that. It's a savings to all the residents of Clay County, Spencer residents as well. And hopefully we'll have the luck of Gillett Grove with us, Berlin, so, yeah. So, under the mayor's report, I got 3 things. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for who organized the Blazing Pines and S'mores event in East Leach Park and West Leach Park. Oh, this past weekend, it was an amazing event. I talked to Bob Fullhart, the Parks Director. He said that he figured there were about 450 people down at the East Leach Park on the ice skating rink. Talked to Nancy Nave, who was volunteering down there, and she said they had to go and get more chocolate for the s'mores, and so I think that was probably a good thing for everybody involved. But I went past there. I did not get on the ice rink myself. I value my artificial knees. And but I saw a lot of people on the ice rink. I saw people snowshoeing, and then I did attend the Blazing Pines event, which was very good and very well attended, I might add. And thanks to the fire department for their participation with that, and the street crew for helping out with everything, and all the volunteers who made that. It was a very, very good community event. Secondly, this Thursday night at 6:30 in the council chambers, there will be a program on sexting and internet safety. And this has been in the works for some time. Last spring, I talked to Robin Munson from the library, who does a lot of the adult programming, and we had talked about perhaps doing a program on human trafficking. And early last fall, we found out that Sacred Heart was doing a program on human trafficking, sex trafficking, with Sister Shirley Finneran from the Lila May House in Sioux City. And so we pivoted, and the speakers and the people that we had lined up on a panel to do the human trafficking program suggested that we go in this direction on sexting and internet safety. So Travis Johnson, the Clay County attorney, will be on the panel, as will Kim Smith from Hope International in Sioux City. We'll have representatives from the Family Crisis Center. CASA will be here as well. I know that the school is doing some presentations. They're having presentations to some grades, I think, starting with 6th grade, maybe 5th grade, I can't remember. Starting tomorrow through Thursday, they'll have presentations at the middle school and the high school. But there will be a program in the council chambers, 6:30 on Thursday night. So I just want to call everyone's attention to that. And then lastly, today we honor the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., a great American, and arguably Martin Luther King Jr. did more than any other American to promote civil and voting rights in the United States, as well as justice for all. King tried to strengthen communities and break down barriers throughout his life. Unfortunately, his life was cut down much too soon by an assassin's bullet in Memphis, Tennessee. But I think the one thing about King's legacy that we all have to take heart of is that we cannot take justice and our rights for granted. We always have to be vigilant in protecting our rights and promoting justice in the United States. A truly great American. And then a little bit of a departure from protocol with the mayor's report. I'm going to pass the baton of the mayor's report down to the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman Orison.
Okay, thank you, Steve. As we all read and heard on KICD and read in the paper, Spencer's losing a wonderful family here in town. Jeremy, Kelsey, and the three sons will be relocating to Des Moines. He'll take over as president and CEO of the Iowa State Fair. We've been very fortunate to have him here in Spencer for 11 years. And I'm positive that the Fair Board knew that when they hired Jeremy 11 years ago, if there was ever a chance for him to get his dream job, which is this one, he would take it, and he did. Jeremy has guided our fair through COVID. changes in governance at the fair level, brought in quality entertainment, put our fair on the map by leading the Fair Industries International Organization this past year. Jeremy's community involvement has included Chamber of Commerce, Convention Visitors Bureau. He was elected to the Spencer School Board, and he's been very an integral part of lay pastor and youth director at the First Baptist Church. I'm sure in talking to Jeremy this noon, I'm confident that the Fair Board has a very definitive plan in place. And I think that hopefully prayers that in a short period of time that they'll be able to get the next director or the chairman of the fair. I think the challenge is whoever comes in is going to have some awfully big shoes to fill. I think we all agree that Jeremy's done an excellent job. Finally, Jeremy, we miss you. We will miss you. We wish you the very best of luck in the next chapter of your professional life.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate that, those words about Jeremy. And for sure, the community as a whole is going to miss Jeremy, but we wish him the very best as the next CEO of the Iowa State Fair. Item 12, council and committee reports. Dan?
Well, we have several things going on, as we alluded to earlier. On Thursday night, if you don't want to go to the sexting program, you can go to Lakeview to the Northwest Iowa League of Cities meeting. Let Mary Beth know I'm planning on going. Then we've got Committee of the Whole on the 23rd. We'll have Bolton and Mink talk about the South Highway 71 South Teep study, and then we'll have a Zoom meeting with Austin from Retail Coach. And then let's plug in the North Y discussion for Monday the 30th at 6 p.m. if that works for everybody.
I'll be out of town, but I'll be more than happy to.
Committee of the whole, Dan, right?
Yep, Committee of the Whole.
Okay.
23rd is the committee of the whole.
We've got the 23rd for the DOT and the TEEP, or on the TEEP study, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it that night, but it'll make it a pretty long night, so it's kind of up to you guys if you want to cram it all into one night or.
It's,
I'm gone both the 23rd.
okay.
I'm good the 23rd.
You're good the 23rd?
Good the 23rd,
Not the 30th?
not the 30th.
Donovan?
I'm good either one.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm also, I believe, open for both. So.
Okay, what, well, we've got 3 councilmen gone. Let's tentatively schedule it, but check with them. How's that?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Keeping the 30th?
No,
I'm sorry.
well, I think, weren't we looking at the 23rd for both of those? Do you want to do it the 23rd? Just do it all in one shot?
Tracy will be here then, he won't be there,
Yeah.
but, you know, I don't know how it works for anybody else. I know Ron won't be back on the 23rd because we discussed the Retail Coach thing with him and he was okay with us going ahead without him and he'd catch up later.
Okay. Okay, but we don't know about Tom or Lauren.
I can Zoom or call.
Okay, but you're good on the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay, and Donovan, you're okay both? Okay, all right.
And then there's Committee of the Whole before the meeting on the 6th to go over the CIP process. And then the regular council meeting on the 6th as well.
Okay. Lots of meetings. Okay. Item 13, I'd entertain a motion to approve the bills and claims. Motion made by Bill, second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 14, other business opportunity to address the council. Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor, real quick.
Yes.
Brian sent out the CIP
Yeah.
draft. Just a reminder for the council, take the time to read through that. It'll certainly shorten up the period. And from my perspective on the Finance Committee, if anyone has any specific questions, broadcast them out to everybody so that we can get answers back to everybody so we don't. It's a long document,
Yeah.
and we'd want to take a lot of
Well-
time talking about it.
Well, I think that's a point well taken, and the other thing is, I think with any committee meeting, if we're going to get documents, let's get them ahead of time so that we can study them. And Brian, thank you for getting that out. Appreciate that.
Brian from Sunrise is here if you want.
I don't. Okay. Other than that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.